Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and of course a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. This is Elizabeth Townsend Guard, your host. I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School. And I have 2 fellowships right now, one at the business school for entrepreneurship, the LePage Faculty Fellowship, and the second one at the Newcomb Institute on gender and women and gender issues, looking at narrativity and fiber, which is so insanely awesome. But of course, I just want to quilt. So today we have Jo Westfoot. She is of the Crafty Nomad, and she's been on the show before, and she's in the UK. And I just love her stuff. So she's part of our Inventory Quilt Project, where we're having designers come for a bunch of designers. I think we're up to 30 now. Work with us with their patterns and do use your inventory to do their patterns. So Jo is kicking it off. You can go to her website, the Crafty Nomad, if you want to take a look at what she does. And she's awesome.
Yes, I'm Jo Westfoot, calling from United Kingdom, from the south part of the United Kingdom.
Right. Cool. Awesome. Okay, so, and you are part of our Inventory Quilt pattern designers, and I'm so insanely excited about this. It's so much fun to be thinking and trying to immerse yourself into somebody else's work, and so this is going to be a blast, and I adore your patterns, as you know.
Thank you.
And we talked a while back. For people who haven't, we will link to that first video, the first audio podcast. But let's just do a quick sort of who are you? Who are you, Jo? Like what?
Yeah, so you could find me online as the Crafty Nomad. So on Instagram, I'm the Crafty Nomad Fleet. Facebook, the Crafty Nomad, and the website is thecraftynomad.co.uk. I'm a quilt pattern designer based in the UK. I teach quilting and patchwork classes, and to design to sell patterns direct to the public and also via some magazines. I do magazine work as well.
Yeah, it's great. And you have a subscription program, and you've also got a lot of interesting things, more than just quilting, and you've got some, your stuff is just adorable. And what we're doing is the, I have it in front of me, but I don't have the name of it.
Break out the bunting pattern.
Right. So tell us a little bit about this pattern. So one of the things I'm thinking about is like trying to understand and help the quilting public understand sort of the process and the thinking behind the designer. Like, who are you as a designer? And sort of how do you start? So this is a really cute pattern. Hold on, let me get to the website so that you can, let me get the information. So again, you go to craftynomad.co.uk, and then if you are looking for the pattern that we're talking about right now, you go to patterns, and you can go to
just scroll down.
Yeah, it's printed all the way down. So like, especially if in either the printed booklet or the PDF, and it's called Breaking Out the Bunting. Breakout Bunting. Break out the bunting. Sorry about that. Break out the bunting. Tell me, like, this is so adorable. It's like 2 different shapes of triangles. It's rainbow, which you're a totally rainbow person too. But so super rainbowy, super scrappy, great for inventory quilt because you can use all kinds of bits of your inventory that you already have. I know people call it scrappy, but I think we're doing more than just scrappy quilts. I think we're like taking stock of who we are in terms of our fabric by creating these patterns. So tell me a little bit about how you started. When you start to do a pattern like this, where do you go? What's your inspiration? Did you already have an idea that you wanted to do bunting? Sort of tell me, let's start from that part of it.
Gosh, I think this was just a sketch. This was a long time ago. So I think I designed this when I was on holiday in Bali, actually, this one. Yeah. So I find that quite a lot of the time I'll design when I'm downtime. So, not particularly doing anything. I find that's the best time for me to actually sit and sketch and come up with ideas. And I think I was just playing with shapes and was looking at interlocking two different sizes of triangle to see how that would work and what patterns you could create with that. It's a really simple quilt that lends itself to chain piecing, so it's a really fast one to make.
It is. It's great.
When I saw you guys talking about the Inventory Quilt on Facebook, I was like, oh my gosh, the breakout the bunting pattern is perfect for that, because I literally, when I made it, I must have had every fabric out of my stash.
That's really great.
To pull together what I was using. And so, you can put so many different fabrics into that one quilt. So it's good for stash busting, but it's also good for inventory recording. So I mean, I like lots of negative space, so that's why I've done my background white. And then the triangles in the colour. But we've had, when we did some of the testing for the pattern, some of the testers used a colour for the background and then white for the triangles. So that it would give you a totally different look.
Oh, I like that.
That inventory, for that background colour. So you'd get a totally different look to the quilt.
So since we're audio, I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second. So what you did is there's different bunting, and it's like rainbow, so it's like kind of diagonal stripes. So you get to sort of have that different. Just so people understand, and so what you're saying is that people reversed it. Did they do the rainbow part still when they were doing it, but then just
no? So what they did is that all of those, what I've done in the pattern picture you're looking at, all of those triangles that are colours, they've done those as white, and then one of them did like kind of stripes going down in blue ombre, like different blues coming down. So that was quite nice. But I think I remember when I was mocking it up in EQ8, I actually did mock up a version with all the triangles white and then all the background colours different colours.
Very
cool. Sorry, the background, what you're looking at as background white. They were all different colours. So it just gave a totally different kind of randomised look. I'll try and put a picture of that one.
Yeah, that would be cool. I love it. So tell me a little bit, you said that you designed an EQ8. That's Electric Quilt 8, and that's a software program. Tell me, do you use that to design your work usually?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I've been using it for probably over a year now. Before that, I was using an online subscription called Quilt Canvas, but that didn't have the ability for me to do foundation paper piecing blocks. So I then decided to upgrade to EQ8, and it was a bit of a learning curve to start with, but I'm really happy with it now. Interesting.
It is a little bit of a learning curve, isn't it? We have it, and who do you think, do you think the designers are using EQ8? Tell me, so is EQ8 like a tool, what role do you think that EQ8 plays? Do you have an idea and then you go to EQ8, or is EQ8, do you know what I'm saying? Like what role does EQ8 play in your designing?
For me, I go to it with my idea already drawn out on paper often, either just as a sketch, or it might even be more detailed and with measurements. And then I basically pull up a blank canvas and I design it from there. However, that said, I've recently just launched a Block of the Month program, which is aimed at beginners. And so for that one, I wanted to use standard blocks, some traditional blocks. So I just pulled some standard blocks from the library that's in EQ8 and used those. So, you can use it either way, really. I think, it really depends on what you want to do and what sort of a designer you are, really. Yeah.
Really interesting. All right. So, and it's an interesting tool. So let me ask you a question. So I'm kind of, triangles freak me out a little bit, but I'm not sure why. They seem a little scary. Do you feel like when you were designing your bunting, will all the triangles meet up? Like your sizing is really interesting. It seems like it has to be equal to the size of the block. So let's say it's a 4.5 inch block. If you have 2.5 inch triangles, you're fine. If you don't want them to overlap, are you just doing the math that goes with the background? Is that what you're? And if you want them to overlap, then they have to be bigger than, they have to be more than
So I wanted the points to match up, obviously, so it looks like they're the kind of the lines of fluttering bunting. But I wanted the triangles to be 2 different sizes, to give more interest to the quilt. Because I think if you have all the same triangles, it just looked a bit boring to me. So that's why I kind of wanted the large and the small. Yeah. And it's just working out how you can get that. Because obviously you're going to lose some in the seam allowance, so you need to make sure that they're going to nest really nicely. And the points are going to match up nicely when you design it. So that's what you're thinking of. And so when you go through that, for me as done, I'm just testing out, blocks, and obviously I can figure out what in my head what I think it's going to be, and then I always test it to see if it's right.
And do you have any kind of tip for having nicely nested triangles? Because mine are not nicely nesting.
It's all to do with your trimming and your accuracy in cutting initially. Always the accuracy of how your points match up is always going to be traced back to your initial cutting, and then how accurate you are with your piecing. So for this particular block, obviously the cutting's important, but when you come to it's a corner block in it, essentially, and so I was thinking some people call them snowball corners. So what you're doing is you're stitching from the corner to corner of the little square that we put onto the big square. And when you're doing that, your needle really needs to be, bang on that corner, going from point to point. And some people struggle with that for a number of reasons. And some of the things that can help you get better accuracy there are making sure that you've got really, a new needle, so it's super sharp. B, you could do what some people do, leaders and enders. So start with a scrap piece of fabric, stitch through, and then stitch directly onto the next one. Another thing that I recommend is if you've got a straight stitch plate for your machine, with just literally a single hole rather than the wider elongated shape, then to use that, because that can stop the fabric being pushed down into the machine. And then finally, having a guide on your machine.
You have great. The instructions have that, and it's really nice.
Oh, do they have that in there? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So all those things can really help you, improve the accuracy.
Really. Right. So tell me about the idea of a bunting quilt. Obviously, there are others out there, and sort of. Do you tell me about your relationship to the other things that are out there, both before you made yours and then after you make yours? Like, what's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, okay. So, well, first of all, I actually wouldn't have initially described this as a bunting quilt, because I've seen what I class as bunting quilts where they've actually got, say, like triangles that are more...
they're like equilateral triangles on kind of a...
Right. And some people have done them where they're actually like 3D, and I think that's really cool. So they kind of lift off of the quilt. Yeah. A little bit like prairie points do. Right. And that's a really cool effect. But no, my ideas was, I guess, when I just started off, wasn't thinking, I'm going to design a bunting quilt. It was more that's what I picture looked like when I designed it out. Right. And so when I came to naming the quilt, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, what does it look like? How am I going to come up with a name? And one of the names was Fluttering Flags. And then something else I think we had as well, similar. And both those names had already been used in the past for quilts. Yeah. Actually didn't really look like mine at all, but that was the name had been taken, and obviously you want to avoid having the same name,
confusion,
so that when people search for it they don't get confused, right? So it was just basically with my pattern testers just brainstorming, what else could we call the quilt, and then we came up with break out the bunting, break out the bunting, naming process came. But to answer your other question, how do you avoid coming up with an idea that perhaps somebody else has come up with already? It's a really difficult question, because you sit here and you work in isolation and you're designing ideas and coming up with things. And whether those ideas are perhaps previously informed by looking at other things online or not, you obviously try for that not to be the case. But how can we tell for sure if our designs aren't influenced by something we saw 3 years ago?
Right, totally. I totally agree.
We're not going to remember, are we? So I think that's always an element to be aware of. But in terms of kind of, would you call it due diligence, I suppose, once you've designed a pattern, and hopefully before you start all the real work on it, so, because obviously hours and hours and hours go into producing a pattern, you want to be doing a search, online, just to see, whether that be like a reverse image search to look, or whether that be keywords that you're searching for, just to make sure it's not already out there.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to put all the effort in to then find that actually you don't really want to release it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
no, that makes sense. And I mean, copyright doesn't require you to be like have novelty or inventiveness. That's like patents does.
Yeah.
But you also really are trying to put something out there that is different in some way, right? Like it's
and also I think it's an ethical thing, and it's a moral thing. You kind of want to do the right thing by fellow designers, and that might not always be possible, because some of the things that I've done in the past have been for classes rather than for pattern release, and those classes then have transferred well into a pattern release, and you're like, do I do it or not? Is it too mainstream, too kind of regular? But actually, that your customers have benefited from that, and the others of your customers will benefit from that. So there is benefit in releasing things.
Yeah. So how do you feel about, you do patterns both in PDF and printed booklet. Are you worried that your patterns are going to get out there because they're in PDF form? And have you had that experience?
I'm sure it happens. I'm sure people share the patterns, with their friends. I kind of hope that they don't, but I'm pretty convinced that they do. I'd rather they said to their friend, hey, this is a really good pattern here, why don't you go buy yourself a copy?
Right.
They perhaps don't know the difference between the copyright law on PDFs and printed matter in terms of
which is you can't change, like that's, I mean, we're trying to get that message out, is if you want to give the pattern to your friends, buy a paper copy, because digital copies don't give you the ability to transfer it to somebody else. There's no for sale doctrine in digital patterns.
Yeah. But I don't think people understand that difference. It's a very subtle difference, and I don't think they understand that. So, that is always a worry. But I think, you could say the same about a printed booklet that could easily be photocopied, and shared. So I think if people want to do that and that's their mentality, then they're going to do that. And I think that, as a designer, it's probably not worth me losing any sleep over. Really, you can't stop people from doing that if they want to do that. You can try and educate them by the words that you put out there and the things that you say, but essentially you can't change their behavior for them. It's
interesting, isn't it? We're seeing people because your post will air next week, or like this coming week, and it's our second birthday. We've been on 2 years now. And it's funny because we've got this Facebook group, and what we're seeing is like, people ask a copyright, we talk about a lot more than copyright, but people ask a copyright question, and before I get there, the group is answering it, and they know the answers. So it makes me super happy to sort of, I mean, not always, right? We get some kind of weird, like, well, that's not good try kind of thing, but for the most part, they're getting the basics of copyright, and I just feel like that's sort of the essence. That's the whole point of the project in some way, right?
Yeah, I wonder though, the people that are drawn to the Facebook group are people that perhaps care about that issue anyway.
Yeah, it's true. So that's our next. We got to figure out the next
how to reach people.
That's right. That's right. So we're thinking about that and trying to figure out how to get to guilds and shops and other things that won't necessarily come to, but that we use the quilting army as ambassadors to the world to sort of get out a basic message,
Yeah.
That's the next step.
Idea.
Yeah. So, all right. So, you are our designer. I'm so excited. So, we have two patterns. We have three patterns. One Willow is working on, or I guess I'm working on this one. Either Willow, who's running it, or me. We're doing the pattern. I elected to do your pattern because I totally love your stuff. And I'm working on that today. And then two more. So we're going to air this, and then we're going to get two of our quilting army to make it, and so we can have more people have more samples and other things and sort of experience the pattern. Now I have a couple of questions on the other side of it. So let's say I do your pattern perfectly.
Yeah.
Which is totally not going to happen.
Why wouldn't you?
What?
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't I? That's right. So I think that's like puzzling. So I've made the pattern. I have no copyright in my version of it except the selection and arrangement coordination of what I did. But like the Copyright Office here tells us changing colors is not enough to give me a copyright in the work that I did. So you still hold the copyright completely in the pattern, and I don't really have anything. Now let's say, not that I did, but maybe, let's say that so one of our sponsors for this is AccuQuilt, and they sent us this cube, but it doesn't have all the sizes that you had in yours. So I changed the sizes and I made them the same. It's not working out actually, but I changed the sizes and it looks a little bit different. At what point do you think at what point would you be really irritated that I put up this pattern, right? Like if it's like,
well, it depends if you're going to write the pattern and then sell the pattern.
That's right. So explain that. So explain that to the listeners. You don't care if I change the size of things or muck it up on my own, right?
Definitely. If you bought the pattern, if a customer buys the pattern and then they use part of it to be inspired to do something, but actually they change it up to suit their needs, be it size, be it adding. I've had some people where they've combined two different patterns together, so an element of mine has gone into it and an element of somebody else has gone into it. Yeah. That's fine because they're using the pattern for their purposes, and that's fun and it's interesting.
Yeah.
I guess the difference becomes is when you've bought my pattern and then you've tweaked it a little bit and then decided to write up your own version of it and then sell it. I guess then I might be a bit irked.
Yeah, you'd be irked at that because then you're competing. It's economic, right? Copyright is it's a moral rights attribution. Like if I took your pattern and I put my name on it, that you would be just like mortified, right? But it is also economic. You don't want to have a market replacement for your pattern because somebody else made the pattern. You want people to come to your pattern and purchase it with you. Is that right?
Of course you do. At the end of the day, you're sort of designing it, in order to sell things, to make it a business. It's paying my bills. Without the income, the bills don't get paid. It's just like any other business.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really difficult one because just literally in the last week or two, I've had a designer friend of mine, and she has had a pattern that she has designed 4 or 5 years ago. Literally, she's seen it pop up on Instagram that she actually thought somebody had used her pattern actually to make this item, and then found out that this person, a very well-known designer, had released the same pattern. Yeah. And it's like, wow, where do you go with that?
Right. Really, I think that came to my attention. And I asked my kid who's 16, I'm like, what do you think? She's like, oh yeah, it's copied. It's so funny. And then another one.
Well, I wonder if it's the same one because there's been 2 or 3.
There's been 2 or 3. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is the most troubling part is like, it's one thing if somebody copies your pattern and like they're not really, it's always the economics. You can see why like Disney gets upset with people. So Baby Yoda's a big thing right now. And so, and I talked to a bunch of people who are making them, and the people that were getting shut down, some people didn't get shut down on Etsy for it because they didn't sell very many, right? Like they weren't important enough economically to matter to Disney. But I talked to one who she had 200 orders for her Baby Yoda in one 24-hour period.
Wow.
And they were all crocheted. I don't even know how she's going to do that. Like, how do you fulfill those orders, right? If you think about just like, even if it only takes an hour to make it, which it doesn't, it takes a lot more time. I don't know how she's going to fulfill those orders. Anyway, but then she caught the attention. So I think what's troubling in these scenarios is whether it's independent creation that somebody else who's famous is making it and they just happen to make it, think of it themselves. Or if they are using someone else's stuff, that's when it becomes really disturbing because you feel like, I made that. Now this famous person's going to make a lot of money or be known for it. And now I look like the infringer. There's just a lot that happens once it becomes a bigger person using it,
Yeah, I think you've just got to be really clear in what you put out there, about it. And I mean, to be fair, one of the chats that I had this week highlighted to me that actually I had a pattern, up that was similar to somebody else's. And so, for a while I sat there and like, what I do with that, and in the end I just took it down because it's not worth it to me, to have that up there. So I do think you have to make some tough decisions and decide, what's the right thing to do.
Well, and I think, one of the things we've created, I just finished the book like a day ago. Like last night I was like all like walking around the house being like, I'm not sure what to do with my life. Because the book is after 2 years, I'm like not freaking out that I have to write. But part of what we've been doing is we put out a notebook, and it's also in this new book, a copy of it that people can make a photocopy of, which is, it tracks your progress. And the idea is that if you created what you're creating and you're putting down when you did it and the inspiration, and here's your sketches, you're in a lot better shape if either you think someone's been infringing or someone accuses you of infringing, because then you can go like, no.
I'm not very good at documenting.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what this book, it gives you it's like 10 pages of documentation, but you could kind of do it as you go. But it's just to kind of keep a record so that you have some sort of confidence that like, and you can say, I looked on Pinterest and I didn't see anything there, or do you know what I mean? Like there's ways to document it to say, yeah, that's kind of the idea.
Yeah,
so,
that's interesting.
Yeah, interesting. How's your VIP club going? We had talked about that before. It's very reasonably priced, and you get what do you get? You get a pattern, 6 patterns a year, right?
Yeah, 6 patterns a year. Yeah, I do. It's ticking along really nicely, actually. It's a friendly group. There's a still kind of heavily UK, but there's becoming more and more US based, and I think a couple of Australians in there as well. So it's definitely getting more international as the years gone by. It's fun. It's fun. There's obviously a turnover of people that come and go, every so often, so I don't know what the average is for staying in the club. We've got some people that have been right from the beginning that are still with us, coming through. So, it's been fun, and it's good for me, because it forces me to be more businesslike about the designing process, to make sure that there's a pattern that comes out every 2 months. So it keeps that regularity there for me. So it's been good fun.
And how long do you think it's taking you to make a pattern? When you think about like every 2 months, how much of your time is being devoted to this?
Yeah, I don't know. My husband said to me this year, after I did my tax return, he said, you really should itemize every hour that you're spending working.
Totally.
Like, yeah, I should, but I don't.
But you don't.
So,
and it's so funny because I'm doing this new project. My new project is about time. And I think that is sort of a very important component of quilting, designing, the creative process. Does it matter how long it takes to come up with the idea? I mean, I think like executing the pattern, and your patterns are very clear, and clearly it takes time to write it, and that's really where the economic value is the kind of teaching us step by step how to get through the pattern. But the question is like, should we be tracking our creative process by time, or is that a sort of a more, that's a kind of silly word, but like a sacred space of like, we don't care how long it takes to make the thing we're making?
No, I think I agree with my husband, although I hate that.
You do. You think that it's good to do because you see it as a business.
You think, from a business perspective, you really should be tracking how long it's taken you to design. But because the initial part of that is so, to me, a bit kind of airy-fairy. You're literally, pen and pencil, pen and paper, and you're literally sketching out. I might be doing that, in the garden, or in front of the TV, or I might be, wherever we are. I might just do that when I'm out and about. So that is less easy to quantify the time. It's probably easier to start quantifying the time when I'm sat at the computer transferring it into EQA, but even then I can lose hours and hours fiddling around with color combinations, what looks good and what doesn't, and which fabric ranges it'll look good in, and that kind of thing, or getting the measurements just right. But I think going forward that definitely should be on my list of things to do, track much more clearly the time that goes into it.
Okay, so the idea of triangles on the side of a block, how protectable, at what point do you feel like it's...
I can't imagine that is protectable at all.
No, it's not.
Because it's such a standard kind of block. No, I wouldn't say that was protectable. And to be honest, if you've obviously got the pattern in front of you, at the back of the pattern, I show you how you can rearrange the block to get lots of different formations and come up with different ideas of how to make your original, your final quilt look. Right. So I don't think any of that is protectable. I would say that with this particular pattern, it's probably just my words.
Yeah, the selection, arrangement, and coordination of what you've done. And I think the other thing that I sort of, it struck me because I've been working on your pattern this morning and thinking about it, is that you've put a lot of thought into it. So my idea this morning was I was going to do it the way you did it and then like muck with it and think about like how, if I change it, how hard is it for me to change it from what you did, right?
Yeah, and sizes. Yeah.
It's
I think
hard.
You start getting a bit of brain ache when you start thinking about the different sizes.
It's a mess, right? So, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. It's not like, it's interesting. So I think that what the pattern designers are doing for us is helping us, inspire us. Like, first they're giving us a puzzle. So if we want to do that exact puzzle, that's super great. You're also sort of taking us through the math, which is really hard, and thinking through what that math is. And helping us get through sort of the techniques of the pattern. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of value
the value in it is to make it easy, right? It's to make the maker's life easier.
Exactly.
So they haven't got to think about those things. They can literally spend their time to make it. Time is precious for everybody.
That's right.
And some people haven't got hours and hours to sit there and think up their own designs. They want
I totally agree.
Pattern, follow it and make it and job done, but obviously people that don't buy patterns, there are people that do buy patterns, people that don't, and the people that don't are people that like to sit there and do the math and to fiddle it out, and they like to, figure out their own puzzles and that kind of thing. So I think, it's just a different market.
Yeah, it is.
Different group of people. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? So, I mean, I think the patterns, and your patterns are clear and helpful, and I was able to sort of think, like, I could sort of see what was happening. I think that's the other thing with patterns, that if you can't really understand what's happening, I can't mystery quilts. That seems so crazy to me.
Yeah, me too.
But it's really awesome. So I can't wait for people to experience your patterns and see your website. It's thecraftynomad.co.uk.
That's right. This morning I've just posted a blog post on there all about this.
I saw that. I was so excited. So what do you think about Inventory Quilt? You wrote about it, but what do you think about Inventory Quilts?
I think it's a really good idea. I hadn't heard of it until you guys put it out there, on the Facebook group. I hadn't heard of it. So love the idea. I look at my own stash and I think, oh my goodness, I probably have too much to put into one quilt.
Yeah.
Certainly the type of quilt that I like. I like quilts with lots of white space. I think if I was going for like inch squares, then maybe I could do it.
Right,
but,
right.
To me, that would be too busy. So I think they're a great idea, really interesting, and I'm going to be working on my version of this.
It's so cool. I was so excited. And I think Inventory Quilt. So I did one that was based on Jennifer Quilter. She did an inventory quilt, and I just totally fell in love with it. And I did one of my own. But now I'm looking at my collection or my stash in a really different ways. Like, I think inventory is really sitting back and thinking like, okay, well, we're doing one that's all Tula pink fabric. I'm doing another one that's I've been now looking at my inventory of strange panels I've picked up over time, and it's like, well, what do you do with these things, right? And so I think it's thinking through the world that we are in lots of different ways, and so I'm excited to spend the next few months. My goal is to just like have used so much of my own inventory that we just have to go on a big shopping spree.
I think people have built up such a massive stash over the last few years. The last sort of 5 to 10 years particularly seem to have really, the fabric companies have upped the ante.
Oh, it's so true. It's terrible.
Yeah, and so people's stashes are getting bigger and bigger. So yeah, we really need to make some dents into them.
Totally. And then we went. We went on this. There was a huge quilt, like 41 quilt guilds get together, and afterwards we went to this little teeny tiny shop, which was in the backyard of somebody's house. They had made it like in a shed, a nice shed, a big shed, a quilt shop. So we went there, and I was like, oh, there was like this weird cat fabric, and I thought my cat. I was shopping for my cat, Remy. I thought Remy needed this piece of fabric. But I felt like that was another way to... What?
That's the best excuse I've heard.
Yes, totally. He needed it. And he actually really appreciated it when I got home. He like played with it. But anyway, I also thought that inventory quilts could be really great because I just bought that one piece. I mean, I bought other fabric, but that one piece of fabric, I could then go home and be like, okay, this is another inventory quilt. Because it's like, well, what goes with this ridiculous cat fabric, right? So I think it doesn't keep you from shopping. It's not a moratorium on shopping. It's just looking at your stash in different ways, you know?
Yeah.
So... Yeah. I don't know. I'm not very scrappy, so I don't know. It's turning me a little more scrappy.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested to see how my black and white one's going to turn out.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
Lots and lots of low volume fabric that I've just been buying just because I like it. And yeah, I'm interested to see how that's going to work out. So
now, I love your stuff that's got the black and white. Is there kind of a strategy in terms of if you do want to do kind of that modern look of like it's like white mostly, but it's got a little bit of gray or black fabric? Do you have a do you have a strategy or thought about it when you're using it or buying that fabric?
No, I think it's just the types of designs that I gravitate towards. Really, I mean, I like fabrics that are generally blends that are modern. So,
yeah.
You know, like Juicy Juice, Shayla Wolf's sort of foundation and Good Vibes Only range, or some Prince fabrics. Those are the sort of fabrics I gravitate towards because they haven't got really big patterns on them, and I can use them in small areas, and so you won't lose any kind of pattern. It'll still be really effective, and the colours really pop, and so again they're really saturated colours, so that's why I kind of gravitate towards those. And in terms of the black and white, again I'd be looking at things with small prints on them rather than big patterns that I can use for those reasons.
It's very cool.
And the same with the whites. All
right, one last question. Spools. Okay. So I've gotten really into spools.
Yeah.
And your stuff is amazing. So you've got a bunch of different things. You have a mini quilt, and you've got the tumbling spools, and you've got another spoolie thing. You've got a bunch of spool stuff. Like, again, do you see that a spool is just like a common motif? Like, do you feel protective over spools? At what point would you be protective of your spool design versus somebody else's spool design?
Yeah, okay. So I suppose the one that I'd be most protective over would be the tumbling spools one.
Yeah.
The other one, the Create Everyday one, is it is foundation paper piece, so it's fairly unique, but you know, not massively. So it's still that skinny kind of, you know, look. And I've seen others out there since that have got that.
Right.
But the tumbling spools one. You know, I've done it as foundation paper pieced and as a sampler, so each of the blocks has got a different design in it, and I haven't seen that anywhere. So I would be really interested to see if anyone do that again, because I think that's fairly unique.
Right.
But yeah, you never know. You never know.
And I've seen it. So it's in the book. The spool thing is in the book because I saw. It's an interesting idea of, and I saw that Kim Lepasek, is that how you say her name? She's the one that did the Dresden plate houses. Have you ever seen the Dresden plate houses? You know where they? Do you know what I'm talking about? Look, Kim Lepasek.
What's her name?
Kim Lepasek. Kim and then Kim and then Lapacek. She is really interesting because she did, if you go to her website, Around the World Dresden wedge stuff. So when you'll see them and you go, oh yeah, I know that. It started with her, the Dresden neighborhoods, where you use a Dresden plate, but you make them into houses instead of flowers. Okay. Anyway, so she had a sew along, which,
you know, is it like going around in a circle?
Correct, right. So the houses. So she did a sew along where they use spools and they put a traditional block in the spool. It's not up anymore. It's really interesting. It just happened. Somebody had done it, and it's got the idea of it doesn't look anything like yours. It's just different spool sizes with different block sizes that, like, flying geese or whatever, different blocks inside of it. But it was the first thing I had seen besides yours that had that. So I thought that was really interesting. Again, very different, but the idea of taking a common block and then making it into a spool is not protectable, but what you did is. And what's interesting is it could have been like you. I mean, I don't know if you're the first one or not, but from my perspective, you were the first one to do it, and that even though you're the first, it's not patent, so that idea isn't protectable. But I haven't seen anything that's like yours out there. And I've been looking at a lot of spool
Did you see in the summer last year we did the group quilt for that we took to Festival of Quilts?
Right.
So that was really fun.
That's amazing.
So I ended up having 60 of those little spools sent to me, and then putting them together in a bigger quilt than the one obviously that's in the pattern.
That's so cool.
That was
I
really
love it.
Fun,
yeah, that's really cool. And yours are a particular size, too. Did you ever they're like more rectangular.
Yeah, they're quite tiny as well.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm still half thinking of releasing it as a bigger block.
Interesting.
So people can make it into a proper quilt.
Yeah.
But, maybe that will come this year.
And then Fat Quarter Shop did one that is a big spool. If you go to, I think, do they call it Threadology?
Oh, I did see that one. That was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was their quilt along for Make-A-Wish Foundation. Yeah, and so we've done a sample of it. That, I mean, again, it's for the book. So everything I've been doing is I only quilt to be like, okay, well, is this infringing or not? Right. So we did one that was people sent in 6.5-inch common blocks, what they thought was like in the public domain, although one wasn't. And we put them together into that kind of spool thing. And the question really was like, is it the idea or is it infringing? I think that ours is different enough. I think the idea of a big spool with a bunch of blocks is not protectable. But again, if we had done it looking like theirs with the sort of sizes and all of that, it would be. So yeah, we're just playing around a lot right now with understanding the parameters and why it would matter to people and when it doesn't matter, you know? Mm-hmm. So spools. I really like spools. And then also you sent me on, I think it's your fault the book took so long. I'm just personally blaming you. Because you asked me a really innocuous question about fonts. And then it turned into this ridiculous, you're like, oh, are fonts protectable? And then I went on to this hunt, and then it turned out that they were protectable in the UK, but not in the US. But if there's on a software program, they are. It's like this whole, you know what I mean? Like they're trying to keep like other software companies from stealing other, like, you know, the code of the fonts. And then it just turned into like, well, if fonts are a problem, let's look at everything else. It's like, sorry about that. And then I felt like I never got back to you. So the answer is fonts are not protectable in the United States unless they have like bunnies or something fancy about them, something that is protectable, right? Like if you make a font with a bunny in it or something. The UK, a little less. It's not clear. They do protect fonts more, but there's kind of common fonts so that people, you know. And then the question really is, who's going to care if you put it into a pattern, right? It's that font. The font maker's very concerned not with you, but with another company. Like it's company to company, right? It's like it's bigger like thing.
A big software company.
Yeah,
software company.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you're going to be a graphic designer, they want you to like buy their bundle, and it's again like your pattern. It's convenience. Like could you replicate that and put it in? You know, just buy the fonts. You know, like it's just easier. Yeah. But I don't think that there's a problem with you with putting fonts into your patterns. But I did like there's certain people in my life that like 3 a.m. I'm like, I still haven't answered Joe's question. So that would be so I'm not as stressed about you anymore. So you're off my stress list. But yeah, you did. It is your fault. The whole book is your fault, I think. That you and Leah Day. Because Leah Day said to me, I was like, I don't know what to name it. And she's like, well, why don't you name it Copyright and Fair Use? And I was like, oh, as a subtitle. And I'm like, okay, well, fair use is copyright. And then I'm like, wait a second, there's trademark fair use and right of publicity fair use. I'm like, oh my God, she's right. It is copyright and fair use. I was like, oh no, that's just a lot more work, you know? So yeah. So you and Leah, you totally ruined my life for like 2 years.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. I think I'm come out a better person, but you know.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Well, I totally adore your stuff. I'm so excited that you are our first inventory quilt designer. It means a lot. You've been so good to us and sent us patterns and all kinds of things. And I sent out your other patterns that you sent you. A few of them I've sent out to people too. So we'll see if they make those. And I don't know. I just adore you. I think your stuff is so clever and interesting, and I just really like your stuff.
Thanks very much.
All right. Anything else that you want to tell us about what you're doing? Or you have the So Long Going for Beginners that just started on last month, so people could always catch up and be part of it.
That's called a progression. I've called the Quilt Progression, and it's a block of the month. It's just 6 months block of the month. Because it's my first block of the month that I've released, and I wanted to start small, make sure that people, wanted to join up. And it's PDF format, so it's emailed out to them once a month. And then we have a Facebook group where I do a video tutorial for each month's block. Because I just felt that if they were beginners, they might need a little bit of extra visual help to see how that all goes together. And yeah, it's been really fun, and I'm keeping it open for the full 6 months and beyond, really.
That's great.
Just to have it there for anybody who wants to join in. There's no pressure to make it in the particular month that you get it.
Right.
You can make it as and when you want to, but that's when the videos will go live in the Facebook group, so yeah, and we've got quite a few people joining in, so not all in the Facebook group. I guess it's not for everybody, Facebook, is
right.
it? But yeah, it's been really fun seeing all the different ones coming together. So that's been good.
So insanely great.
And the other thing.
Yeah, and it's so reasonable. I'm gonna just inject it. So it's 18 pounds for the whole 6 months, right? You just one-time payment, which is like $24. It's it's like $6. It's like $4 a month. It's really, really reasonable.
Yeah, it's pretty reasonable, and I can't remember. Oh yeah, there's 3 different sizes available in the pattern. So they can either make the baby size, which is just 1 block a month, or then there's a small throw, which is 2 blocks a month, and then there's the large throw, which would be 3 or 4, depending on the block per month. So yeah, it's just multiples of the blocks. Really.
That's really nice.
But you can get different sizes. So there's a number of different ones being made up. A couple of beginners, just doing 1 block a month. So it's not too overwhelming. But I think most people have opted to make the small throw, and then there's a few like me that are making the big one. So I'm obviously making another one alongside everybody, and because my first one wasn't rainbow, of course this one has to be rainbow.
Of course. I think what's nice about the blocks that you've chosen is that some of them are very, very traditional blocks. Like everybody should know how to do this block. And then there's some that you're like, how do you make that block, right? So I think that it's got a nice balance of traditional blocks and a little bit more modern kind of take on things.
Yeah, so what I wanted to do with the idea of being it called progression, I wanted it to build up. So we've started with something, fairly simple, and then we're moving on. So they literally are, introducing new skills. We've started with strip piecing. The next one is the, oh goodness, gone out of my head now. Disappearing 9 patch.
Yeah.
And then, we're introducing half square triangles, and then flying geese, and then quarter square triangles. So it's just progressively getting slightly harder.
It's
so,
really great.
That's
and if you're a beginner out there, what's nice about your patterns is you really do walk people through you don't presume knowledge, which is super nice. And these 6 blocks are really standard things. So if you can get them down and learn how to do it right the first time, you're in good shape.
Yeah, and so the other thing that the pattern includes in it is actually a number of bits of information for total beginners. So the beginning, there's information about how to cut and sort of standard information on piecing before we actually get to the actual block. There's a huge amount of information on the cutting, so it depends on 3 different sizes. So we've got layouts on the fabric as well, so to make sure they maximize the use of the fabric that they're buying. And then month 6 will also include a bit of information on how to baste and how to quilt and how to bind. So,
that's so great.
You've kind of got the full package. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's probably, is it late there? It's like 11 a.m.
5 p.m.
5 p.m. Oh, that's not terrible. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm so psyched. And thank you again for joining our Inventory Quilt pattern designers.
I'm looking forward to making
Yes, I would love for you to post on and say hi in our main group. We'll send you more information. Our inventory group is our working group, but our main group is much, much bigger. And I would love for you to come post and say hi and tell them who you are. It'd be super great. Yeah, I like we have a couple of these working groups, and I see them as sort of more like there are behind the scenes working group, and then we sort of so we have So I would love for you just to say hi and connect your blog post and keep posting about your progress. It would be super great. So.
Okay, great. We'll do.
All right, cool. Hold on. Let me turn off the recording. Hold on. Okay. Oh, and you're okay with us posting as is, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. So go to the blog. Let's see. Let me see if I can get to the blog post. It's so interesting, isn't it? So yeah. So go see her blog post, but let me see if I can find the coupon code. And so it's if you're listening to this later, it's expired. But for the month of February, which started today, the coupon code is valid, and I don't see it because I'm trying to be fast.
Yeah, it's in bold. I think it's JWQ20.
JWQ20, right, 20% off. Yeah. That's what we were suggesting people do. So, yeah, here it is.
Yeah.
JWQ, you said February 20. So it's JWQFEB20.
That just means 2020. That means like the end of the month, the whole of the month.
Right, so...
not
right.
February 20th, yeah.
Right.
Sorry, that's the English.
Right, so JWQFEB20 is the code for the bunting the pattern that we're focused on, which is so great. But go check out her website. It's super fun. It's great. Her patterns are fun. And thanks. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
All right, fabulous. Okay, hold on. Don't leave again. You've been listening to the 3rd season of Just Wanna Quilt. I'm Elizabeth. I hope you enjoyed this chat. We have a Facebook group if you want to come chat with us and hang out with us. Just Wanna Quilt. We also have an Instagram account. We have tons of things going on all the time. We're just like, we just say yes to everything, so we have a lot of stuff going on. We have some books if you want to learn copyright or trademark. And we also now are selling long arms. So if you're in the market for a long arm and you want a good price on one, we sell Grace Company long arms, and they're awesome. So go to our website. Thanks for listening, and I hope you come back. And for those quilters out there listening, because we do have some non-quilters listening too now, I hope you get a chance to quilt today and come play with us and show us what you've been working on.